3, hit it!
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. Do you know you could be listening to today's episode on our brand new Caffeine for the Soul app? All you got to do is go to the Apple App Store or Google Play Store. You can download it. You can listen to all these podcasts. You can do our free basic course, and there's a whole host of other free resources available for you there. The title for today's episode is probably a bit misleading because we tend to think of sensational as synonymous with amazing, fantastic. I want to live a sensational, fantastic, amazing life. And what I am going to share will absolutely, in my experience, help you live a much nicer life, a life with a lot more joy and a lot less stress. But it isn't what you think. So in order to talk a bit about what I mean, I want to share a story. When I was in the worst of my depression, so I was clinically depressed from about the age of 13 to, I would say, probably 20. There wasn't an official end date, but it was pretty bad in the sense that I had a lot of suicidal ideation. And I talk about this in my TED Talk, Why Aren't We Awesomer? And you know, cut to the happy ending. I've got a lovely life. But at the time, I really struggled. And I didn't know what to do about it. But I tried a lot of things. I tried getting drunk and high. I tried exercise and sport. I tried friends. I tried throwing myself into school. I tried all sorts of things. And most things helped a bit, and nothing actually really worked. But one of my experiments, one of my attempts at mitigating my misery came out of desperation. And I realize this sounds like a cliche, but I was literally living in my parents' basement. And I just was spiraling down. And I knew the feeling very well by that point. I was 19 or 20. And I was so low that I didn't think I could get out of bed. I couldn't get to a phone to call somebody. I mean, the plus side was I couldn't have done anything terrible to myself either. I was so down I couldn't move. And a thought came to me that had never occurred to me before. And it was, look, why don't you just feel it? Why don't you just sit here and take it? And it was kind of that. It was kind of, you deserve to suffer. It wasn't like this beautiful thing. Hey, you could just feel it. It was like, why don't you just stop it? Just sit there and feel it. And I remember just sitting with it and not running away and not trying to make it better and not trying to distract myself from it and just feeling the sensations in my body. And the strangest thing happened. And it felt like it began to happen within seconds. I have no idea how long I was there. I would guess I wound up being there for about half an hour. Because what started out as almost like a punishment of myself, as soon as I was focusing on the sensations started to shift. And I started to notice them move through my body. And then some of them began to dissipate. And then after a time, and I couldn't tell you how long, but probably a couple of minutes, I fell into a state of pure bliss, of pure well-being, of the kind of a feeling that if you've ever spent time with a baby and they're not hungry or wet or tired and they're just blissed out on being alive, it was that kind of feeling. And that was so profoundly different for me in that moment that I've never forgotten it. Years later, I came across a book by one of my mentors, Gay Hendricks, called The 10-Second Miracle. And he essentially said, if you feel any uncomfortable feeling and you stay with the sensation for 10 seconds, it will begin to change. And I noticed that and I thought, oh, that's kind of a cool thing. And then one of my more recent mentors, Mavis Karn, who's the author of the new book, It's That Simple, A User's Manual for Human Beings. She shares in the book, and she shared with me, a version of that experiment. And I'm going to encourage you to do it now if you're up for it. Don't do this if you're driving. Don't do this if there's any sort of thing that you need to be paying attention to outside of yourself. But just for a moment, let yourself get a little bit scared or a little bit mad. Don't go nuts. Don't wind yourself up. Just enough so that you can point to where you feel it in your body. So like I'm thinking about something and kind of I can bring back some of the upset, and I'm pointing to my chest right now. And then as soon as you're pointing, as soon as you've got a spot, don't worry about thinking about it. Just put all your attention on the physical sensation and just notice what happens. And if you need to pause the podcast to give yourself time, you can. And then you can put the podcast back on once you notice that the sensation has moved and dissipated. Now for me, it moved from my chest into my shoulders. Then it kind of moved down my shoulders, down the sides of my body. And now there's really not a particular sensation. I can feel a general warmth, but I can't feel the sensation. Now I have done this with hundreds of people, not thousands, but hundreds of people in the room with me at different times. And everybody has that experience unless they go back up in their head and keep thinking about it. And this was the first time I realized why focusing on the sensation works. As Mavis says, it's divine physics. It's our divine engineering. When you put your attention on the physical sensation, you're taking your attention off the thinking that produced it. You can't be fully with the sensation and the thinking at the same time. And our bodies are made to process sensation. We're made to handle stress. In fact, there's research that shows that we can be stressed, and the research varies anywhere from 30 minutes to up to 3 hours a day with no harmful long-term effects. So people who suffer from chronic stress-related illnesses is because they're in that state more of the time because their thinking is continually generating it. And sometimes when somebody's really going through something, this simple act of just feel it, just feel the sensation and see what happens can be a powerful tool. Here's the thing. I first did this by mistake, on accident, as my kids would say, when I was 20. I've done it as I did it with Gay Hendricks 20 years ago. I have done it with groups as an experiment for years. It was only in the last couple of months that it occurred to me I could do it all the time. I could actually rest my attention in my body with my physical sensations, and my thinking would stabilize without my having to do anything about it. And it came about. I made this discovery because I was having trouble sleeping. And, my mind, I mentioned in another podcast, there was an awful lot going on with me last year. And my mind would race and my body would get very stressed and scared and tight and caught up. And I tried various things to manage my thinking. I tried making a deal with myself that I wouldn't think about certain bad thoughts when I was trying to sleep. And that sort of worked sometimes. I sometimes, had a list of sort of happy, distracting thoughts, visualizing myself on a cloud or in for me, there's something about I have this vision of hang gliding on Mount Everest, which I think in real life would terrify me. But when I imagine doing it, it's quite a beautiful, relaxing feeling. And sometimes that would work. And sometimes it would occur to me to just feel what I was feeling. And sometimes that would work. And I was talking to Mavis about it, and she said, the only thing that I have seen in 83 years that always works is living with the feeling, letting yourself feel the sensation. And I began to just play with it. And I realized even as I'm talking with you now, I am present to the sensation in my body, and it's moving around and it's doing things. But it's allowing me to be completely present with you as I share. I probably have already talked about it too much. What I want to encourage you to do is play with it, just for the week ahead. Have a sensational week. Spend as much time in your body with the physical sensation as it occurs to you to do. And notice what happens to your thinking, notice what happens to your moods, notice what happens to your levels of clarity, notice what happens in your world. Have fun, learn heaps, happy exploring, and I'll talk with you soon.